Capitalism in New Zealand. Capitalism in New Zealand operates within a mixed economy framework characterised by a combination of private enterprise and government intervention. Here's a brief overview. Historical context. Colonial Era. New Zealand's economic history began with a focus on agriculture, particularly sheep farming, which became the backbone of its economy. Mid-20th Century. Post-World War II, the government played a significant role in the economy with extensive regulation and ownership of key industries. Economic reforms, 1980s to 1990s. New Zealand underwent significant neoliberal reforms, reducing government intervention, privatizing state-owned enterprises, and promoting free market policies. Key features of capitalism in New Zealand. Private sector dominance, the majority of industries, including agriculture, manufacturing and services, are privately owned. Market economy. Prices and production levels are largely determined by supply and demand. Regulatory framework. The government maintains regulatory oversight to ensure fair competition, environmental protection and consumer rights. Welfare state. Despite its capitalist economy, New Zealand has a strong social welfare system providing healthcare, education and social security. Modern economy. Diverse sectors. Key industries include agriculture, dairy, meat, wine, tourism, education and technology. Global trade. New Zealand is highly dependent on international trade with major trading partners including China, Australia and the United States. Innovation and technology. The country is increasingly focusing on innovation with a growing tech sector and investments in research and development. Challenges and criticisms. Income inequality. Like many capitalist economies, New Zealand faces challenges related to income inequality and housing affordability. Environmental concerns. Agricultural practices, especially dairy farming, have raised environmental concerns, particularly regarding water quality and carbon emissions. Government role. Economic policy. The government implements policies to stimulate economic growth, support businesses and ensure economic stability. Social programs. There is substantial government investment in public services such as healthcare, education and social welfare to support equitable development. Overall, New Zealand's capitalist economy is characterised by a blend of free market principles and significant government involvement aimed at ensuring social welfare and economic stability. Does capitalism not involve social welfare? Capitalism as an economic system primarily focuses on private ownership of the means of production, market-driven prices, the role of supply and demand in allocating resources. However, the pure form of capitalism doesn't inherently include social welfare programs. The presence of social welfare within capitalist economy depends on the specific policies and interventions adopted by the government. Key points. 1. Pure capitalism. Emphasises minimal government intervention in the economy, relies on market forces to determine the distribution of economic wealth. In its purest form, social welfare programs are not a fundamental component. 2. Mixed economies. Many modern capitalist economies are mixed economies where both market forces and government interventions coexist. Governments in these economies often implement social welfare programs to address issues like poverty, healthcare and education. Poverty, healthcare, education and unemployment. I'm going to read that again. Governments in these economies often implement social welfare programs to address issues like poverty, healthcare, education and unemployment. Examples include the United States, the United Kingdom, and New Zealand, where capitalist economic structures coexist with various social safety nets. 3. Social welfare in capitalist economies. Social welfare programs are often introduced to mitigate the inequalities and social issues that can arise from purely market-driven economies. These programs are funded through taxation and aim to provide a basic standard of living for all citizens, supported economic stability, and promote social cohesion. 4. Welfare capitalism. A term used to describe capitalist economies that incorporate extensive social welfare programs. The Nordic countries, e.g. Sweden, Denmark, Norway, are often cited as examples of welfare capitalism, where robust social safety nets and public services exist alongside a capitalist market economy. In conclusion, while capitalism in its pure form does not inherently include social welfare, many capitalist countries adopt social welfare policies to ensure a more equitable distribution of wealth and resources to address the social challenges that can arise in market economies. Colonial Era. The colonial era in New Zealand significantly... How long is it? 6 minutes. The colonial era in New Zealand significantly shaped its economic, social and political landscape. Here's an overview of the key aspects of this period. Early European contact. Exploration. Dutch explorer Abel Tasman was the first European to sight New Zealand in 1642. British explorer Captain James Cook later mapped the islands in the 1770s. Initial interactions. Early interactions between Māori, the indigenous people of New Zealand, and Europeans involved trade, particularly in muskets, metal tools, and other goods. Colonial settlement. British colonisation. The formal colonisation of New Zealand began in 1840 with the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi between the British Crown and various Māori chiefs. The treaty aimed to establish British law in New Zealand while ostensibly protecting Māori land rights. Land conflicts, disputes over land ownership and breaches of the Treaty of Waitangi led to significant conflicts known as the New Zealand Wars 1845 to 1872, resulting in large-scale land confiscations from Māori. Economic development, agricultural focus. The economy during the colonial era was primarily based on agriculture, particularly sheep farming. Wool became a major export, driving economic growth. Infrastructure, development of infrastructure including roads, railways, and ports facilitated the export of agricultural products and the import of goods and machinery. Social and political changes, population growth. European settlers, primarily from Britain, migrated to New Zealand in large numbers, drastically changing the demographic makeup. Governance. New Zealand established its own parliamentary system, gaining self-governance in 1852 under the New Zealand Constitution Act. It became a dominion within the British Empire in 1907. Māori impact. The colonial period had a profound impact on Māori society, including land loss, cultural disruption. Māori impact. The colonial period had a profound impact on Māori society, including land loss, cultural disruption, and population decline due to introduced diseases and conflicts. Legacy and ongoing issues. Treaty of Waitangi. The treaty remains a foundational document in New Zealand's legal and political system. The Waitangi Tribunal, established in 1975, addresses grievances and land claims related to historical breaches of the treaty. Cultural revitalisation. Efforts to revitalise and preserve Māori culture and language have been significant in recent decades. Biculturalism. Modern New Zealand society acknowledges its bicultural foundation, striving to balance the interests and rights of both Māori and European descendants. The colonial era was a formative period of New Zealand's history, setting the stage for its development as a nation and influencing its contemporary identity and societal structure. New Zealand's economic history. New Zealand's economic history is a rich narrative of transformation from a primarily agrarian society to a diverse modern economy. Here's a detailed overview of key periods and developments. Pre-European era. Māori economy. Before European contact, the Māori economy was based on subsistence agriculture, fishing, hunting and gathering. They cultivated crops like kumara, sweet potato, and relied on natural resources. Early European contact, 1642 to 1840. Exploration and trade. How long has it been? Abel Tasman and later James Cook explored New Zealand, leading to increased European interest. Initial trade between Māori and Europeans involved goods like flax, timber and muskets. Colonial Era, 1840 to 1900. Treaty of Waitangi, 1840, signed between the British Crown and Māori chiefs. It facilitated British settlement and legal governance, although land conflicts arose. Agricultural economy. Sheep farming became the economic backbone, with wool becoming a major export. The introduction of refrigeration in the 1880s allowed meat and dairy exports, significantly boosting the economy. Early 20th century, 1900 to 1945. Economic diversification. New Zealand diversified its agricultural base, expanding dairy, meat and wool production. Both world wars impacted the economy. New Zealand provided agricultural products to Allied forces, leading to economic growth. Great Depression. Like many countries, New Zealand faced economic hardships during the Great Depression, prompting government intervention in the economy. Post-war economic boom, 1945 to 1973. Government involvement. The government played a significant role in economic development, including infrastructure projects and social welfare programs. Export economy. New Zealand continued to rely heavily on agricultural exports, primarily to the United Kingdom. Economic challenges and reforms. 1973 to 1990s. Oil shocks and export market diversification. The 1970s oil shocks and the UK's entry into the European Economic Community disrupted New Zealand's economy, forcing diversification of export markets. Economic reforms, 1984 to 1990. The Labour government implemented significant neoliberal reforms under Finance Minister Roger Douglas. These included deregulation, privatisation of state-owned enterprises, reduction of trade barriers and welfare state restructuring. Modern era, 2000 to present. Diverse economy. Today New Zealand has a diverse economy with significant contributions from tourism, education, technology and agriculture. Free trade agreements. New Zealand has pursued free trade agreements with several countries including China and Australia, enhancing its global trade network. Innovation and sustainability. There is a growth, innovation and stability, sustainability, innovation and sustainability. There is a growing focus on innovation, particularly in technology and sustainable practices in agriculture and other industries. Current economic trends. Tourism, a major sector, though significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, leading to a temporary economic downturn. Tourism, a major sector, though significantly impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, leading to a temporary. Primary industries, agriculture, forestry and fishing remain crucial, with a strong emphasis on sustainable practices, technology and services. The tech sector is growing, with investments in digital infrastructure and innovation. Challenges and opportunities. Income inequality and housing. Addressing income disparity and housing affordability remains a significant challenge. Environmental sustainability, balancing economic growth with environmental protection, especially in agriculture, is a key focus. Global trade, maintaining and expanding trade relationships in a changing global economic landscape is vital. New Zealand's economic history reflects its adaptability and resilience, transitioning from a colonial agrarian economy to a modern diversified economy integrated into the global market. Mid-20th century. The mid-20th century was a transformative period in New Zealand's economic history, marked by significant growth, government intervention, and societal changes. Here's a detailed look at the key aspects of this era. Post-World War II economic boom, 1945 to 1973. 1. Economic growth, reconstruction and recovery. After World War II, New Zealand experienced a period of economic growth and prosperity, driven by high demand for its agricultural products, especially from the United Kingdom and other allied nations. Full employment. The government maintained policies aimed at achieving full employment, leading to low unemployment rates and rising living standards. 2. Government intervention. Welfare state expansion. The government expanded social welfare programs, including universal health care, introduced in 1938, state housing projects and pensions, contributing to improved social security and living conditions. Public works and infrastructure. Significant investments were made in infrastructure projects such as roads, railways and hydroelectric power schemes to support economic development. 3. Agricultural dominance. Dairy and meat exports. New Zealand's economy continued to rely heavily on the export of dairy products, meat and wool. The introduction of refrigerated shipping in the late 19th century had already revolutionized the export industry, allowing fresh products to reach distant markets. Guaranteed prices. The government implemented guaranteed prices schemes for agricultural products, providing stability and security for farmers. Trade relations. 4. United Kingdom. The UK remained New Zealand's primary export market. The close trade relationship was bolstered by historical ties and favourable trade agreements. Diversification efforts. By the late 1960s, there were efforts to diversify trade partners to reduce dependence on the UK, especially as the UK moved towards joining the European Economic Community, EEC. Economic challenges and changes, 1970s. 1. Global economic shifts, oil shocks. The oil crises of the 1970s led to economic challenges worldwide, including in New Zealand, causing inflation and economic instability. Decline in wool prices. A global decline in wool prices affected New Zealand's economy, prompting the need for diversification. 2. Shifts towards diversification. New markets. The government and businesses sought new markets in Asia and the Americas to reduce reliance on traditional British markets. Industrial and service sectors. Efforts were made to develop the industrial and service sectors, including manufacturing, tourism, and finance. 3. Social and political changes. Māori urbanisation. There was significant migration of Māori from rural areas to urban centres, leading to social changes and challenges. Cultural renaissance. The 1970s saw a resurgence in Māori culture and identity, with increasing advocacy for rights and recognition, influencing social and political policies, government policies and economic reforms. Economic management. Import substitution. Policies aimed at reducing dependence on imports by promoting domestic production were implemented. Subsidies and controls. The government maintained various subsidies and controls to support the economy, although these would later come under scrutiny and reform. 2. Planning for the future. Think big projects. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, the government launched large-scale industrial projects known as the Think Big initiatives aimed at boosting the economy and reducing energy dependence. The mid-20th century was a period of growth and transformation for New Zealand, with significant government The mid-20th century was a period of growth and transformation for New Zealand, with significant government intervention playing a crucial role in shaping the economy and society. While the country enjoyed prosperity and stability for much of this period, it also faced emerging challenges that would lead to substantial economic and social reforms in the following decades. Economic reforms. Economic reforms in New Zealand, particularly during the 1980s and 1990s, were transformative, shifting the country from a highly regulated economy to one of the most open and market-oriented in the world. Here's an overview of these key reforms and their impacts. Context and drivers of reform. Context and drivers of reform. 1. Economic challenges. Stagflation. New Zealand faced economic stagflation combined with high inflation, stagflation, in the late 1970s and early 1980s. Trade shocks. The UK's entry into the European Economic Community reduced New Zealand's primary export market. Oil crises. The oil shocks of the 1970s increased costs and strained the economy. 2. Political change. Fourth Labour government, 1984 to 1990. Elected in 1984, this government, led by Prime Minister David Lange and Finance Minister Roger Douglas, initiated comprehensive economic reforms. Key economic reforms. 1. Deregulation and liberalisation. Financial markets, removal of controls on interest rates, foreign exchange and credit, leading to a more dynamic and competitive financial sector. Labour market. Deregulation of the labour market, reducing the power of trade unions and making labour laws more flexible. 2. Trade and tariff reforms. Tariff reductions, gradual removal of import tariffs and subsidies to encourage competition and efficiency. Trade agreements, pursuit of free trade agreements to expand market access for New Zealand exports. 3. Monetary policy. Reserve Bank Act 1989 established the independence of the Reserve Bank of New Zealand with a clear mandate to control inflation, introducing an inflation targeting framework. 4. Public sector reforms. Corporatisation and privatisation, transformation of state-owned enterprises into profit-orientated corporations, many of which were later privatised. Public sector efficiency. Introduction of performance-based management and accountability systems within the public sector. 5. Tax reforms. Simplification. Broadening the tax base by introducing a goods and services tax, GST, and reducing personal and corporate income tax rates. Equity. Efforts to create a more equitable and efficient tax system. Impacts of the reforms. 1. Economic performance. Growth. After initial economic adjustments and a recession, New Zealand experienced improved economic growth and productivity. Inflation. Reforms successfully reduced inflation, stabilising the economy. 2. Sectoral changes. Agriculture. The removal of subsidies forced the agricultural sector to become more efficient and market-driven, resulting in a highly competitive and innovative industry. Diversification. Growth in other sectors such as tourism, technology and services. 3. Social and employment effects. Unemployment. Short-term increase and unemployment due to labour market and industrial restructuring. Income inequality. Reforms contributed to an increase in income inequality, with debates continuing about the social impacts of the neoliberal policies. 4. Global integration, trade expansion. New Zealand became more integrated into the global economy, with significant growth in trade with Asia and other regions. Investment. Increased foreign investment and business confidence. Continuing evolution. Adaptation and adjustment. Subsequent governments have made adjustments to balance market efficiency with social equity, including re-regulating certain sectors and enhancing social welfare programs, sustainable development, increasing focus on sustainable economic practices, environmental protection, and addressing social inequalities. Legacy and lessons. The economic reforms of the 1980s and 1990s fundamentally reshaped New Zealand's economy, creating a more open, competitive, and resilient economic structure. While these reforms brought significant benefits, they also highlighted the challenges of balancing market efficiency with social equity, a balance that continues to evolve in New Zealand's economic policy. Here endeth the sermon.